Hello everybody and welcome back to 4th Age Guides. Today we are looking at the Chiefdom of Rhun, and we're doing a little guide for the campaign side of things. We did a battle guide video for this faction earlier, and today we're going to look at the overworld, building options, strategy options, and the like. Rhun is one of my favorite factions, in part because of the great versatility that we saw in that battle video, but that versatility also translates into the campaign. In other words, you have a lot of options for how to undertake your goals. Rhun is estimated to be a bull-roaring faction in terms of difficulty. That makes it hard, but not very hard. It's not the hardest faction in the mod to play by any stretch, but it is fairly tricky, and so that's one of the things that we will talk about today. I want to jump right in here to the starting position, and we'll start by saying that Rhun is one of the quote-unquote major factions in the 4th Age Total War Dominion of Men. There is a bit of a distinction. It's not overtly referred to in-game, but there is a bit of a distinction between what we have internally called major factions versus minor factions. Major factions have different build options available, in particular, specialization. So this city development building is only available to those major factions, and these tend to be larger factions or factions with a great deal of history, that type of thing. City development allows you another layer of specialization in addition to choosing whether you are going to bring a settlement into a military policy, a financial policy, or an administrative policy, which itself does determine what level of buildings you can build. City development allows you these specialization buildings, of which you can only have one in any given settlement, and many of which have specific requirements. So Rhun gets a lot of these. In addition to that, just being a major faction and having all these development options, Rhun also can choose between keeping to its native alignment of barbarian culture, ways of darkness, or switching to the shadow cult and going cultic, so to speak. This has implications for Rhun's roster that we talked about in that battle guide video. Some of your native troops, your higher tier native troops, will get replaced with cultic troops if you go this route, but it also has implications in terms of buildings you can make and even in these specialization buildings. I want to go down through these specialization buildings here really quickly, then we'll look at the strategic initial position for Rhun, and then I want to take a look at a late campaign just to show you how I approached things. So the first couple of specialization buildings for Rhun are both cultic, the cultic temple city and the cultic scions of Rhun. Both of them require cultic temples. If you have them, you can build them. The temple city is more for public order. This allows you to hold cultic feasts, which are sort of like races or games in vanilla Rome Total War. And they basically increase the happiness of a province. So it might be something to consider as you conquer into territory that you anticipate having trouble keeping under your thumb. That does cost, significant money, costs a lot of upkeep, but it might be an option. Cultic Scions of Rhun allow you to train cultic units such as Axes of the Shadow or Swords of the Shadow, depending on where you build them. So that's another sort of military option for you. All the other options are not alignment specific. You just need to meet the other requirements. So the first one, Thrall Stockade. This one is really a financial-focused building. You're going to need a market square. You're going to need a financial or an open policy for this. And this is going to increase the trade income of the province, but it will also decrease the construction costs of buildings that you build across your kingdom. So not just in that province, but anywhere. So it's kind of a backdoor in to the timber resource. For those of you who don't know, in 4th Age Total War, if you have certain resources on the strategic map, they can have building effects. Timber is one of these. If you have a wooded area with timber, you can eventually build an industry building that will decrease construction costs across your realm. And that is what the Thrall Stockade does. So if you get that and a timber resource province, then you can significantly see those costs going down. Thrall Stockade is something that does have a bit of a downside, and that is it lowers the public order in the settlement by about 10%. So that's something to remember. If you build it in a settlement on the edge of your territory that is experiencing lots of unrest, it may not be the best option for you. I tend to build this in places like Dorwinion or Lond Nurnin, where initially you can kind of maintain public order. But we'll get into more detail about where these are best built later on. The cattle trader is a fantastic option, top tier in most provinces. This is a place that does require. This is a building that does require livestock resource, which is these cattle and sheep icon on the map. And these are dotted really all over your territory. Probably Raycost is the place I'd recommend this the most. This is your northernmost initial settlement. It also has a port, or at least potential to build a port, so you can make some great sea trade. And this is going to drastically increase the trade income there. So I definitely push for a cattle trader in Raycost. But really, any financial place that you're seeing a good amount of trade income, you will want this. Fighting pits are another top tier option, mostly because of the berserkers. Berserkers are an essential unit for Rhun, I think, especially as you enter into the later game, but even in the mid game, you want to have them available to you as soon as possible. So the fighting pits are how you do that. That means you need a high tier settlement, and you need to have one that is headed towards financial policy or potentially a chief settlement. I go with Amrun Dor for my initial fighting pits just because it's already fairly close to the highest level of development. You still have some building to go. Here you need to build the major province, and then you need to build up the Hall of Drinking and then the Hall of Feasts, and then you can make your fighting pits. That allows berserkers. It also allows fighting contests, which are another type of game or like monthly games, that type of thing, to increase public order. Hunting lodges I usually go in the capital for. This is a good option for a place where you're training some of your high-tier cavalry out of. This increases the experience for all cavalry, ranged units, and wains that are trained in the province that has the hunting lodges. So you want it to be probably in a homeland settlement, and probably also in a settlement that has the horse resource, as Tham does. You can see right here. That's because in order to build your higher tier cavalry, you need the horse resource available. In order to train war wains, you need the horse resource. If you don't have it, then you're only training your tier 2 cav and your skirmishers and archers, and having experience bonuses to those isn't nearly as useful as it is for having experience bonuses for your riders of Rhun, maybe even your chieftains or your war wains. Hunting lodges also increase trade a little bit, but there is an upkeep cost associated with it, so you don't necessarily look at these for a financial boost. It's just kind of a nice side benefit. Finally, tributary camps are one of the most interesting specialization buildings. You really want to go for these in North Rhun and Khand. And I'm going to just remove the fog of war here for a second, because we'll take a look at what that means, what specific settlements you might build those in. North Rhun's capital is Fornhud. This is also a chief settlement, and this is a place that I would definitely go with a tributary camp. North Rhun does constitute several other territories. Thordram and Gwaithring are also settlements of this region, and tributary camps could also work there, but Fornhud has the advantage because it's already built up quite a bit. We can't see that here, but I believe it's already at either an urban settlement or a major province level, so you can get to tributary camps fairly quickly. So once you take it, get those tributary camps. Why? Because at that part of the map, you can train slingers and, most importantly, great axes of Rhun. These are two-handed, heavily armored, war cry capable, anti-armor wrecking balls with the ability to increase their attack bonus when you're fighting in snow. So that's like 50% of your battles, right? Or 100% if you time it very well. So they're a great unit, and I definitely recommend training them out of Fornhud as soon as you can. In Khand to the south, the tributary camps, I go for those in Akarn, similar to Fornhud. This is the capital of the area. It is a chief city, so it's going to be built up. It's going to be quicker to get to the tributary camps level. And down here, you can train some horse archer units. And these will constitute the steppe outriders, which is basically Khan's first level of horse archers. They do differ from the mercenaries and from the levy version slightly. They've got a better missile attack, a combat bonus in deserts. They're a little smaller in unit size, but I think they're still worth building. But again, more importantly, at the tributary camps in Khand, you can train horse archers of Khand, which are a much better missile attack, lances as a secondary weapon, so they make kind of a good, interesting hybrid unit if you have a couple in an army. So that's the specialization buildings overall. Now, Rhune's initial setup is that you begin with 5 settlements. Tham, again, is going to be your main training center initially because you've got all the infrastructure here. You've got up to hosting halls already built, and you can train up to your tier 3 units as a result. Rhun also begins with an army in the field, just temptingly near the rebel settlement of Erebos. This is unwalled. It would be very easy to just march over here and take a settlement, but I would actually recommend not doing that. My move instead would be to head back here, recruit some mercs, and then check your faction leader. He's just a poor governor. If he's not intelligent, and he's not, I would be inclined to just remove him and bring him out with most of the other forces here. Just leave the warband behind, meet these forces up, and get ready to take the fight to Adunabar. This is because, although you could take Erebos very early, that's only going to get you closer to Rovanion, which is this orange faction to your west. Rovanion is going to be expanding early into places like Brag Estelad, Lithmore Chant, and if you border them, then they are going to be sending forces your way fairly soon. Of course, that means that you would have to defend this area pretty early. And I say, why bother defending it early when it's going to take Rovanion a while to move into here? As soon as they do, then you can start your war with them, unless Dale has already done it. So I would leave Erebos and head down into this part of the map, because you have a couple of factions on your borders here, or soon to be. One of them is Khand, and the other is the much more threatening Kingdom of Adunabar. As you can see here, Adunabar starts with a fairly impressive stack. They've got some catapults here. They've got some very high-level infantry and cavalry as well. So they're going to attack these rebel settlements that separate them from you. And as soon as those fall to Adunabar, you're going to know that what's coming next is an invasion. And you'll know because Adunabar will be moving towards you. They're going to be ending up on your territory. And then you'll have to decide how you play that. Do you wait for them to attack you, or do you preemptively attack them? Well, let's take a look at the diplomacy. I'll give you my thoughts. Rhun begins the game as allies with Khand. This is a military access kind of alliance, which means that in theory, if you wanted to, you could march down through here and fight Harad and, march back. There's not really a lot of point in doing that necessarily, but we also trade with them, and we are, of course, allied with them. However, Khand is also allied with the Kingdom of Adunabar. So here's what's going to happen. Adunabar takes these rebel settlements, or at least one of them, borders with you, and then starts marching an army onto your territory. Then you're going to have to decide, do I wait for them to attack, or do I attack them? I recommend attacking them, because if you are attacked, the AI of Khand will have to decide whether they're going to stay with you or with their other ally, Adunabar. So which are they going to pick? In my experience, the AI almost 100% of the time sides with the attacker in this scenario. So if you attack Adunabar, they'll drop their alliance with Adunabar and they'll stay allied to you. That's useful, I think, because that buys you some time. Khand will remain your ally for a while. Usually, Khand is more interested in attacking these rebel settlements first because it's on their victory conditions. They end up at war with Farharad. Again, I think they need to capture this to win. They may end up at war with Harad. So that if they are at least allied with you and they've got a lot going on in their south, then they're less likely to start trouble until later. Rest assured, they will start trouble at some point, but in my thoughts, what you want to do early game is take care of the threat of Adunabar, which is much more dangerous than Khand, and make the capture of the Nirn region your #1 priority. Nirn has lots of advantages. As you can just tell, this is a fairly fertile area. There are several ports here already built, meaning that if you capture all of these settlements, you can have some trade going back and forth. Lond Nirnen in particular has stone walls initially. It's a chief settlement. That means you can build all levels of every building here. And it's a great place to have economically because it also has wine as a resource. So that's going to boost its trade income. It's going to be giving you lots of good land tax. Another great thing about capturing Lond Nurnen is because it's so well built up, you are able to get more quickly to the higher tier of units that are available there. And a very important unit available to you in the Nurn region and Mordor broadly is the Vassal Macemen that we looked at in the Battle Guide video. Vassal Macemen are much tankier than most other units available to Rhun, and their maces are effective against armor. So that's a great unit to get. Make Lond Nurnen one of your top priorities. Assuming you can capture all of the Nurn area, you will have a problem with this broad gap. And in my experience, it's fairly difficult to feel secure enough to take Barad Eden early, because usually either a Dunabar will come back and it'll just be difficult to defend against them, or the Reunited Kingdom will beat a Dunabar and they'll come over here and start attacking you. You can, however, hold all of Nurn by making sure that you fight right on this little square here. If you remember my my Rhun campaign video where I did a brief let's play of Rhun, you can park an army right here, and the terrain is incredibly favorable for you. And the AI, because you're on their territory, if they own Barad Eden, they own all of this. Rather than skipping past your army and attacking your city of Saragon, they will be much more tempted to attack you here because they don't want to leave you in their rear. So they're going to attack you time after time, and you're going to win heroic victory after heroic victory, especially if you got a unit of berserkers or two with your army up here. So this is a great place to hold. With an army there that's a reasonable force, you can defend all of this Nurn region. And, of course, you also want to think about defending your south. Eventually, for your victory conditions, you need to take a Karn, which is this chief settlement right here. What I like to do, as we'll see, is wait and eventually attack Khand once they've grabbed a few more territories in the south. That way I can use them as a buffer against Harad. Harad can be a huge problem in the late game because obviously their center of power is way over here, well out of your reach, and they train tons and tons of stacks. And so assuming that they get large, which they often do, you do not want to share a border with them because you'll be fighting endless battles of these really large, very tough units against yours. And you just don't have the staying power, unfortunately. So you want to wait and hope Khand does fairly well, and then when it looks like they're attacking you or when you're ready to attack them, you can head down here and I like to stop pretty much at a Karn because, again, this is a walled, nicely walled settlement with a stockade you can put archers on. It's a chief city. You need it for your victory conditions. And you can hold out here against Khand just by training a bunch of archers. The Khand is basically a skirmisher faction. Fairly light troops for the most part. So you get a bunch of archers, you get spearmen. You know, a good mixed army, but archers are going to be your key. You should be able to hold out against them quite handily. In the central part, this is a central corridor here between the Sea of Rhun and the Ash Mountains. This is where your fight with Rovanian and possibly a Dunabar is going to take place. A Dunabar does tend to expand over here as well. So you'll have to watch how the war goes because likely Rovanian and a Dunabar will come to blows, and you may get a chance to ally with Rovanian. Who knows? But it is also likely, in my experience, that you do go to war with them. So what you may see is gradual expansion along this corridor to the west. I wouldn't overdo it because if you go too far, you see it becomes difficult to defend. You stick your neck out too far. The other thing is these settlements are very slow growers, very small populations, and they are hardly built up at all. There's almost nothing here for infrastructure. So it's going to take a lot of investment and a lot of time for you to use these, to their fullest potential. And that's another reason to allow Rovanian to take them and build them before you come to blows with them. I should say that also there's this rebel settlement of Hythe here that is well worth taking at some point. You don't need to rush because the AI tends not to grab it, at least as I've seen. But take it, and then you can have a pretty secure island here with some timber to help. Finally, North Rhun. North Rhun is your neighbor to the north. You don't have any agreements with them diplomatically. It may be possible to get an alliance from them early on, and that would be fairly reasonable because initially you are at war with Dale, and the dwarves will come in the next turn. The dwarves and Dale share one of those unbreakable alliances. So it's going to happen that you'll be at war with Dale and the dwarves for the entire campaign. And they'll also probably be at war with North Rhun and some of these other Northmen factions. So you may want to just be friends with North Rhun, but unfortunately, again, you need to capture Foreign Hood. That's one of your victory conditions here. So what I like to do, again, is either wait until it looks like they're attacking me. I tend not to go too far too early, but I do assemble some units from this area. Once I'm confident that I've got enough to deal with the Dunabar and maybe a little deterring force for my south in case Khan starts to cause any trouble, I slowly start to build up some units from Raycost and Fennis Rim and head for Thordram. Thordram is, again, a province that's in North Rhun, which counts for that tributary camp to get you those really good axemen we were talking about. But there's not really a rush getting it because, again, you're going to have to get Foreign Hood eventually. You can, and it has been my experience, get a protectorate out of North Rhun, especially, if you play your cards right. I've done that in my most recent campaign. I couldn't get Khan to submit, unfortunately, but North Rhun is possible, so they can be a very useful buffer. If you leave them with, like, this settlement right here against Dale, you can kind of sweep down through and capture Belligant, which is the third province that you need to take for victory as Rhun. Now, in addition, you're going to need 40 settlements overall to win, so you've got a lot of work to do once you take those 3 that are required. But that's how I would, in a nutshell, summarize the goal. Basically, you want to expand into the Nirn region first, make this your breadbasket, and deal with the Dunabar and the Reunited Kingdom if possible. While you're doing that, keep an eye on the south, get some spies or at least emissaries down here to monitor the progress of the wars, move when the time is right to capture a Karn, and in the north, from the beginning, start assembling a few troops to take Thordram, and then building up a force to head into the northwest to actually deal with North Rhun. So what I'd like to do now is load up my most recent save of a campaign as Rhun. And this is fairly late game, 460 in the winter, so that's over 200 turns. And it's very, very rare that I play this long, but I wanted to basically get to my win conditions before I did this video. And in this campaign, I've done pretty much what I recommended. You can see that I've got a pretty vast territory stretching from the banks of the Anduin all the way into Rovanion, back into my homelands and down, pretty much exactly like I said, to Akarn, and then I also grabbed Lug and Alagos. And I've got these remaining provinces of Khans, or settlements, under siege. Now, I've been waiting, and this I've had these guys under siege for a very long time, and I've pulled back and done it again. And the purpose behind doing this is just to maintain this buffer zone between me and Harad, because as I said, I do not want to fight them. And it's working so far. I can keep these sieges going indefinitely. I can just continue doing it as soon as it looks like a city is about to fall. Those have 4 turns. That's got 1 turn. So what I would do here is actually lift the siege. Actually, no, I'm going to maintain the siege. Let me see if I can get Khan to submit. They do have an emissary here, fortunately, so we'll just see what happens. Accept overlordship, and this is typically what I would do. I would offer them all of my money. So just put, like, 100 million or whatever there, and the game will tell you whatever you've got left. And they're going to say no. It's very unfortunate, but North Rhun sold out for much less, so I was able to get them as my protectorate for a much easier, much lower price. Still around 100,000 or so, if I recall. So this is going to fall next turn, or they're going to sally out and get defeated by me, but I don't want either of those things to happen, again, because I don't want to share a border. So what I'm going to do now is lift the siege and re-siege. And I'm going to go ahead and build ladders and rams, just in case I decide I need to assault for whatever reason. Otherwise, I'm going to keep these sieges going until I decide, you know what, I could take whatever Harad throws at me. I'm going to go ahead and let these fall, and maybe Khan will be more amenable to becoming a protectorate when they have only 1 settlement left. That's what I did with North Rhun. I got them down to 1 settlement, and then they capitulated, but But Khanda, I just don't want to risk it, and I'll show you why. Because here's what's waiting in the fog of war. We've got a couple stacks here, 3 stacks, and then we've got just all of this, right? Harad, and of course, the diplomatic situation shows that Harad is not at war with anybody. Miraculously, they've signed a peace with the Reunited Kingdom. They're all on great terms, and they're just completely at peace, which is, of course, if you were playing the Reunited Kingdom, they'd be all over you. But anyway, I don't want to share a border with them because that would mean instant warfare. What else have I done? I do have a protectorate in North Rhun, and you may be noticing the map here. North Rhun actually owns a wide swath of territory, a broad strip running from the northern coast of the Sea of Rhun all the way to, Belegant's territory, Ravanian's territory, and they even have territory in the East Bight. They did not conquer this. I gave this all to them. I won these battles, my men bled for these cities, and then I turned around and gave it to North Rhun. Why would I do such a thing? Well, it's because during the course of these wars, I was not only fighting, Rovanian, Dorwinian, Dale, but the Bjornings piled on as well, and I just couldn't deal with all of these enemies. So what I ended up doing, I got North Rhun to be my protectorate, and they had these 3 territories. And then I took Belegant for myself, and I kept it, but I got Rathwin, and I gave it to North Rhun, because at this point, Dale had all of these territories, and I wanted a buffer zone. I did the same thing with Arab Gobel. I did the same thing with Thrimfeld. I had to capture this twice, actually. I captured Holt, gave it to North Rhun, but the Bjornings came back and took it back from them. That's fine, because that bought me the time to basically distract those other factions so I could expand into Rovanian and into Dale's homelands, which I finally did, and managed to capture the city of Dale itself thanks to a spy that got in there. Otherwise, I don't know how that would have worked out. Dale, as you can tell, is besieging me, but I'm not worried about this at all. It's great walls. I've got lots of archers. I've got some of these great axes. I'm sure we'll be fine. The unfortunate thing, you'll notice that my provinces controlled is 40, and I've met those goals. I've got all of the settlements that are required here, but I still haven't gotten my victory video. Why not? Well, this is an unfortunate bug, I think. This is not the first time I've seen this, but when you have a protectorate like I do, and just to verify that, I've got an overlordship over North Rhun. You are overlord of this faction. Their territory counts for yours. If you were to count up all the territories I own, it's actually something like 36. But because North Rhun has, or 34, North Rhun has 6 of those, the game considers those part of that 40, but for whatever reason, that doesn't count for the victory condition to trigger, so you're not going to get a victory screen. I don't care. This is a moral victory, and I'm happy to take it. Other notable things about this campaign involved taking the dwarven settlement of Nerrig Zigil. You will see this dwarven army on my territory that is very small. They've got mostly Wayne bows, which is really a nightmare, so I'm glad they're going away. So what happened was their army was parked right up here, their field army, and I had my own army that besieged their settlement and then assaulted it before their field army could come and attack me. And once you take the town, for whatever reason, they don't seem interested in taking it back. They're going to head back to their homelands where they still have territory, and they're probably not going to bother me along the way. I'll still, of course, keep an eye on that army. But the dwarves are a fairly passive faction on this campaign, just like the Shire, just like the Elves. And that means they're basically set up like the Senate in Rome Total War. So you can be pretty confident that they're not going to come into your territory and attack you. However, what the dwarves will do is come onto Dale's territory to attack your armies that are invading. So if you're attacking Dale, like I have been at several points here, don't be surprised if a dwarven army swoops down and smacks one of your armies to kick you off of Dale's territory. And that can be kind of a disaster. In fact, taking Dale is extremely dangerous, because it's right next to this dwarven settlement. And many, many times, if you're basically guaranteed, if you besiege the settlement, just like they're besieging me here, you're guaranteed to have the dwarves come down and attack you. And then, of course, the Dale garrison shows up as well. Usually that's a pretty big garrison. And you have a very difficult time defending against both of these armies, because it doesn't matter how small an army this is a nightmare to deal with. And I don't know that I would be able to defeat it. So what I used was subterfuge. I had a spy that I went into the city. He had the gates open, and so when I moved an army to besiege it, I could immediately assault. I did that, and I got the city myself. A few other tricks. You can see that I've finally got Barad Eden. Looks like it's about to rebel, and I think we're going to make it, actually. There's some unrest that's going down next turn. But these forts that are all around the borders of Mordor here in the northwest are actually kind of a godsend for you, because if you can besiege them, they're very difficult for the AI to deal with. So I've got this tiny army here besieging this fort. It was a bit larger, but I decided I didn't need it. The AI can't attack my army from this side, right? Because they can't get around. This is just completely choking the pass. So somehow I'm blockading them completely, but the relief army can't get in. Either way, it works both ways. So if you own this and the AI is besieging you, you can't relieve the force. So that can be something you can try to keep in mind. But I found it very difficult to hold these settlements, which is why I haven't bothered to take them back, even though I did have them at one point. But Minas Ithil is fantastic to take. So everyone, I've probably already knows that Minas Anor is a great settlement to have, just because the strategic map is actually, this is what the battle map looks like. And this is an incredibly easy place to defend. But so is Minas Ithil. Even if it's not rebuilt yet, because there is sort of a ruined version, which is what you see first. This is a fantastic place to defend with great walls, multiple tiers, and so I'm confident you could hold this against big armies. Even so, what I've done in the Ithilien region is heavily use these forts, or camps as they're called in the mod, simply to deny movement to the AI. So this army, I've got forts around to sort of prevent people from coming up here and attacking Minas Ithil. So this protected my back while I was besieging the city from people coming from Minas Anor and attacking. So don't forget to use those forts. They're very useful for a situation like this. Well, at any rate, I think this is just about everything I need to talk about. I've got, Minas Anor on the ropes. Maybe I'll play out this defense battle for one last hurrah before I call the campaign a win, but I've basically finished it at this point. I've got my victory goals, at least as far as I'm concerned, and I'm feeling pretty good about where I'm at. One thing to keep in mind is that my economy is not doing the best. I am losing some money, in part because I've built up a lot of settlements with specialization buildings that are fairly costly. Like, for example, here we've got the Thrall stockades, I believe. Yep. Fornhood, we've got those tributary camps, which is where I can crank out the Great Axes of Rhun and the Eastland Slingers. We've got the same thing going in Akarn for the Steppe Outriders, Horch Archers of Khand. And so we're moving around with lots of buildings, lots of upkeep, and it's difficult to maintain that kind of economy. But that's why early game capturing Nirn is very important. And it's a really fun campaign because you have like 5 separate fronts, really, depending on how you count it. And you've got always different enemies to fight. You've got different strategies. You've got to sort of take into account different units that you can use as you expand. And so I definitely recommend it. If you haven't tried it, give the Chiefdom of Rhun a shot. I think we'll call it there for my favorite faction of the mod. And I hope you'll join me in the next one. Bye-bye, everybody.